Great. Well, welcome to today's webinar. Really appreciate you guys taking time to join us today. And if you see this Peloton behind me, this is not a workout seminar. This is AI search and what it means for your practice. We're really excited to take you through this. As you know, and I'll jump to the next slide. AI is changing a lot of things, and definitely it's changing how consumers and patients and all of us search. And so we're going to talk about it specifically for patients looking for practices like yours. And it's everywhere now, and it continues to expand rapidly, but especially in healthcare. We've seen healthcare as one of the biggest AI agentic search categories out there, more than other categories. And so it's becoming even more of a revolutionary change in a shorter period of time. And it's changing the way patients evaluate their symptoms, how they make decisions about their care needs, right? I find myself doing that a little bit too much. And especially, and this is what we're going to get into today, is how patients seek and choose practices in their local market. Not just using traditional search methods, they're actually speaking with AI agents like ChatGPT or AI mode, and asking contextualized questions and getting to a practice that way a lot faster, and with in a lot of cases a lot more relevance. And so we're also going to talk today about how your practice is presented to prospective patients. And so because that is changing, right? And the things that we do on our websites and other areas impacts that in a profound way. So that's really the core focus. Looking at the actual goals, we're going to just start really quickly on, just a brief review of AI search and leading AI search engines. Though I imagine everybody on this call is already very familiar with that. We're just going to go through it for context. And then talk a little bit about what's changed in 2025 and why that's important for your practice. So that's going to be something that we're going to really touch on in a big way. And then most importantly, what factors influence how AI search finds your practice or practices today? Are there things that you can do in the short term right now to make a change or make an impact? Because this is something that's evolving, and we're seeing it evolve even this month relative to December. And so we'll talk about that too. Then we'll talk about some search predictions, but we want to make sure that a big chunk of our time today is just an open Q&A, because we know a lot of people have a lot of questions, and hopefully we can answer them. If we can't, we'll get back to you. But that's really the agenda today. Cool. All right, just quick overview about us. We'll make this fast. Myself, I'm the VP of Marketing for Internet Brands in the health vertical. And basically, what our team does is, we work with practices to help increase their visibility, enhance their credibility online, and ultimately help them acquire more patients. So we're very deep in helping practices find solutions to grow their practice and to build credibility in the marketplace. And that's something that we work on every day. And then Anthony, I'll let you talk. Keep
Sure.
me honest.
Great. Thank you, Nick. And good morning, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. What an exciting topic, AIO and just AI and just kind of the shift of the industry. It's great. My name's Anthony Howe. I'm the Senior Director for Digital Strategy and Operations for our professional services teams. We focus on the fulfillment arm of the business. We're really focused on SEO, paid search, social media, and just overall digital presence for the businesses and practices that we support. AIO has been kind of creeping up, and it's been something that we've really been interested in and have been researching for quite some time. And it's really interesting to see kind of the industry and how it shifted so much, and what Nick had just mentioned in such a little amount of time. So really excited to be here today to speak with everyone.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you so much. So, right, so we're going to get into it now. And we'll race through some of these topics, and we'll stop and have a little banter between us. But if you have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat. And so when we do have the Q&A, we'll make sure to address those along the way. So yeah, what is AI-powered search? It really, at its sort of fundamental level, consists of two major components, right? You've all probably many of you have heard about large language models. That's the data modeling, the actual code that's modeling that's developed to understand and summarize and predict text or large quantities of data to make assumptions and conclusions, right? They use this transformer architecture that to really understand the context of the data and build contextualized answers, which is very different than standard search. But what makes it come alive are the AI agents. And that's why you hear this term agentic search, where you have an actual AI agents that consumers or anybody can interact with to utilize the LLM to do the work itself. And so the LLM is the brain, the AI agent is really the translation, to use that. The weird sort of issue that we're in today, and you're probably seeing it or reading about it possibly in the news, is, up until now, over the last 20 to 25 years, the majority of the data, online is designed for human interaction, for, it's the visualization of a website and pictures, and it's just designed to be interpreted and processed by humans and not by an LLM. And so what that means is our websites, everything we do, to promote ourselves or talk about what we do and connect with patients is done for patients, for human beings. But LLMs actually look at websites differently. LLM search will index your website differently depending on how you present your content. And so I think the big race going forward is going to be, how, is there going to be a universal standard to how websites should be developed with agentic search in mind, right? And so we're in this interim period where we're all trying to figure it out. And that's, again, what we're talking about today. We've identified a number of items that you can do that will really impact your performance there, at least in January of 2026. So again, users are still, they browse and click before they buy, but AI powered search agents, you ask agents questions instead of using keywords and doing the longer term work. So if you kind of break this down into the next slide, you talk about traditional search, the Google search versus AI powered search, like on ChatGPT or Perplexity. The themes are, it's keyword based queries, right? It's an individual proactively thinking about what they're searching for. Whereas with a agentic AI powered search, it's conversational questions. It's just one question that gets you to an answer and eliminates steps. That's why people use the term 0 clicks, because ultimately with some of these services like ChatGPT, consumers are able to get a 0 click like response that would have in the past taken them a number of queries to get to. User researches and synthesizes. So in the old world, or at least the world of today still, with traditional Google search, I'm looking to trying to understand more about a practice. I'm understanding, maybe I'm using my insurance provider portal to make sure they're in network, or maybe I'm searching for my local area. But ultimately, I discover practices, then I'm looking at reviews, and then possibly even the sentiment of those reviews and looking at the language itself. So it's a multi-step sort of endeavor, whereas again, AI-powered search is a direct synthesized answer. In traditional search, there's blue links, and there's not really anything on it like that on the AI powered search side. It's already context aware and adaptive. So yeah, that's definitely a difference. Static page results versus dynamic real-time responses to your questions. And again, in the past, we've been talking about SEO-driven rankings. Anthony's a veteran of SEO, so he can tell you a lot about SEO in a whole separate webinar that's 2 hours long. But here it's, now with agentic search, it's understanding your intent, not just the keywords themselves, the literal words. It's more about, what are they really asking for, and understand the context of the search question that you're asking. And then, yeah, multiple clicks to find an answer versus action-oriented outcomes. I don't know, Anthony, if you got any comments or...
Yeah. I think two things kind of come to mind. The first question that maybe, I know I'm asking myself this question, I'm sure some out there may be asking the same question, is SEO dead, right? And I think the short answer to that is no, it's not. It's just gotten more complex, right?
Yeah.
So I think, what we're seeing here is just getting people to the information faster, right? So instead of having to do like Nick had just said, like we're clicking one time and then we have to find this little bit of information and we look for something else and we kind of compose and compile this information that we have to make a decision. The whole idea behind this, provided the information is good, is to get you to that information in one conversational query, which is very, very efficient, and really makes the whole user experience better for folks in general. If you've used any ChatGPT or any of the other Gemini or Perplexity or any of these other kind of LLMs that we'll to be discussing a little bit today, that's really I think the big value that these tools bring, is that it gets you the information you need quicker, and then as you kind of learn how to work with it, it can get you really great insights that you wouldn't have thought of otherwise, which is really where I think that the biggest value that this kind of transition has kind of brought.
Yeah, no, exactly. This next slide is similar to the previous one again. Just as a summary, again, it's in the traditional world of Google search. It's about finding the relevant keywords that are going to get you the right search result. And we all know it's becoming more and more painful, or it has become painful. You do a traditional Google search, you have AI overviews at the top now, and sometimes in the AI overview section, there'll be practices in there. Then you have map pack, the blue links. There's a lot of distractions, a lot going on in a Google search, and it's increasingly become difficult for people to get to what they're wanting to do, which is really the answer with semantic relevance, right? It's looking at the relevance of what's being asked in the question, but doing it in a very efficient way. So again, as Anthony talked about, user-initiated outcomes, we have agentic outcomes, right? You're really getting that from your agent. Multiple clicks to get to your answer, and this is more of a zero-click environment, and we'll show an example of that, I think, on the next slide or two. SEO was the term, and it's been the term for a long time, and now people are saying AEO, answer
engine optimization.
Engine optimization, right, exactly. So it's just more about the answer than it is about that.
And I know this is just a bunch of acronyms, right? But it's interesting to kind of see how the development of these acronyms has kind of blossomed in terms of AEO, which is answer engine optimization. We have GEO, which is generative engine optimization. Then we have AIO, which is artificial intelligence optimization, and who knows, maybe we'll have a couple other ones. I've vouched for AIO just because it's a clear it's a clear definition of what it probably means to somebody if they were to hear it, and it's not to be confused with GEO, which we use in a lot of other from a marketing perspective, we use in a lot of different ways as far as your geographic location. So it's kind of tough with that one. And then AEO, answer engine optimization, it's not really all encompassing necessarily all the time. So it's been kind of interesting just to kind of see where people, or where kind of the industry is kind of settling on what do we actually call this type of action that we take from a business perspective to try to promote our businesses.
Right. Yeah, I've seen some LinkedIn profiles that say AEO expert. I'm like, oh my God, right? I'm like, that's interesting. Things are moving fast. And again, so traditional world is Google and Bing, and now we've got a Google AI overviews. You've got Gemini, which is more about generative search, and then AI mode, which is kind of the closest thing to ChatGPT. Copilot, Perplexity, Claude, Grok. There's a long tail already, and there
Hey,
as good.
oh, sorry, Nick. I was going to ask you, have you had an opportunity to try AI mode for Google?
Yeah, totally. Yes, I use it a
It's
lot,
helpful
actually.
if you're looking for stuff, looking for businesses. It does help make the experience a little smoother in terms of taking out some of those steps, which I think is really nice.
100%. Yeah, and it's kind of the example. We've heard a lot of examples, but in the traditional sense, in the traditional world of Google search, booking a plane ticket to New York from LA. I go in, I either go through an aggregator, or through Google to or an actual airline website to identify times, find the right value, and go through booking a ticket like we've all done. Now it's getting to the point with agentic search where you just say, I want to be in Newark by 5 o'clock on July 23rd. And I want the cheapest flight, and that's it. So it's really asking the agent to do that heavy lifting for you. So and soon there's going to be a world where there's agents talking to agents, right? And I think that's sort of the next generation that's being anticipated today is will we where we can ask an agent to perform a task that will in turn interact with other agents to establish the booking, identify options, and do all that heavy lifting. Truly be an assistant, for that use case, and get us all the answers, not just kind of high level information.
Yeah, I think it's like if you were to have like an AI personal assistant. So you
Yes.
have your personal assistant, hey, read me back all my appointments for today, and what else do I need to do? Do we have the shopping list, my to-do list, etc.?
Yeah.
And oh, I need to book an appointment somewhere. So you would be talking to your personal AI assistant, right? And then that personal AI assistant would then reach out to the other services that are out there, other agentic services that are out there, and they use that
Yeah.
through they call it MCPs.
Right.
But it's really really interesting if you look at it. Now, I've experimented a little bit with this. It's a lot of work to set up your own personal assistant at this point. So there's a lot of you have to be pretty technical to do it right now, but obviously that becomes less of a challenge as time goes on and people actually figure out how to do this. But I definitely see that there's definitely good value in having that, and like, hey, send your wife or significant other flowers or whatever. Don't forget it's their birthday in a week. Stuff like that. It's really, the possibilities are pretty endless from that perspective. All the things you forget that you forget to forget, right? It kind of helps with that perspective. The other quick mention I was going to say on this too is that I was recently looking at booking like a weekend ski trip at Big Bear. It's a close place, pretty close to LA, San Diego area, which both Nick and I are located near. And basically, I'd asked like, is there snow? Because it hasn't been a very great year for snow in Southern California. So I asked what trails are open. I used the AI mode, by the way. What trails are open? What are the ratings for hotels? How expensive are hotels? Like kind of a series of things to book a trip. Where similar to Nick's example there for booking a plane ticket or whatnot. Kind of utilizing that same kind of thought. How close can I get to actually booking the trip by using one of these tools? And it actually did pretty good. It said, hey, there's four, like it listed all the different resorts, the number of trails that they had open. It listed the hotels that were in the area, how much each of those hotels was around, right? And they were actually they stated it was a little bit cheaper than it actually was, which is kind of interesting because after you click in it, it goes into the Google hotel hospitality tool, and it was actually more expensive. Like I'd buy like, I don't know, $20 a night for each of the rooms or whatever, but still it gave you pretty good context, and it had pretty good information, which, that still saved me. I mean, look at the amount of time for me to manually go look at all that stuff, go to each of the resort mountain trails and figure out how many lifts were open, all that stuff. That would have taken me at least an hour. I was able to do that all within, I don't know, like 20 minutes tops, which was great. So I found out what I need to know and was, done, and figured out, that we should book the trip, which was great.
That's great. Awesome. Great. I don't know if you want to talk to this one, Anthony, but again, I think the point of this slide, and then we're going to get into more specifics about healthcare, but again, and this is really about healthcare searches. Again, it's always been multi-step. It's not, as sentiment focused, even though reviews are critical. It's definitely been, sentiment's an important factor, but the point of this slide is for LLMs, sentiment is even more important. So not only just your reviews, and we're going to talk more about that, and the number of reviews, but the sentiment in those reviews is a much more important element, and that is definitely influencing agentic search.
Yeah, it kind of condenses the buyer journey, right? So it used to be that you would go to a website, and then you would look up a business, and then shortly thereafter, well, first actually it was like you would mention it to a friend. It was word of mouth marketing. Hey, you should go see this business, right? And we're all used to that, and have done that for years, right? And then we wanted to kind of gauge what that experience would be, so we go to the website. And after we go to the website, now we have like Google My Business and other kind of citation platforms where you can just go look at those reviews and make sure like, is everything all kind of matching up with what my buddy said or friend said or whoever referred this business? Is everything kind of matching up? Does the website look clean and professional? That's an important piece to build that authority and trust, right? And then where are we from a review perspective? Is it all 5-star reviews and they have 500? That could be questionable. If they have a low store rating, that could be questionable, right? And so like, what is that secret number? And actually, there's statistics on that, which is like around 4.6 is like almost around the perfect number where people have the most trust, because you're always gonna have some good with the bad and whatnot. And what I think is interesting about kind of this new evolution is that we're condensing that buyer process into one kind of query, and it's able to kind of encompass all three of these pieces into one result, which is interesting. So like saying, hey, here's how well this business is rated. Here's where they're located. Looks like they provide X and Y services, and so on. It looks like they provide the services that you were looking for, which is great. So it just really kind of condenses that whole buyer journey, which is, I think, again, it just gets you to the information that you want faster and gets you the right kind of information that you're probably most interested in if you're going to make a purchase, or if you're going to go to see a doctor or have some kind of treatment. It's going to be it's just going to expedite that whole process and that whole journey.
Yeah, exactly. Here's an example of a ChatGPT search in my local area. Find a dermatologist near me was the request. And again, what's interesting about this and what's changed since November and December is even then, we used to say, oh, it's more about branding. You would have a CTA and you would have results with a list of practices, but there wasn't much uniformity around the next step. In a lot of cases, it was a listed practice, but not necessarily something that was actionable. Now in January, things have changed. And so when I do a search like this, I get this without even having to click, just moving my cursor just over the name of the practice. I get the practice recommended name, which is based on a formula of and we're going to talk about that. But again, you see a number of reviews, a high review score, a trust factor in the language, and then the directions website or call icon buttons. That's now uniform. And there's even cases where you're going to see a map pack like a map that will pop up, and they're still experimenting with that in January. So this is actually a new evolution for healthcare, because again, healthcare searches are a very large slice of the agentic search pie right now, and that portion is actually moving faster than things like automotive or home building or other categories. So consumers are getting very savvy when it comes to not only self-diagnosing, but also how they're searching.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting if you look at, like, it has a 4.7 star rating. The interesting thing is you don't really see, where are those star ratings come from, and it's not necessarily always Google, which is interesting. So I think this has kind of been a shift that we're seeing as well. Just looking at AIO in particular, is that we're looking at more than just Google now. We're looking at Bing, we're looking at Yelp, we're looking at all the other kind of health related citation directory websites, which we'll go into in a few minutes here, which includes WebMD, ZocDoc, and so on. It's taking into consideration all those ratings. Facebook even, I don't know if people have ratings on Facebook, even that's a big one. So it's not looking at only one source of truth, but which I think is a big shift for AIO in general. Is that it used to be just kind of like Google's is the biggest kind of game in town, and now it's kind of taking that and shaking it up a little bit. And Nick mentioned this a little bit, but some of our testing, we looked at the map pack. So we were testing with the map pack. So the first question in AIO is, do you have a result in the LLM? That's the first question, right? So like these businesses here all have a result in the LLM, which is good to know, right? But where is it in proximity to you? And having that map pack is really interesting. And so when we were testing with the map pack, it was there for 6 months, and then after a while, it disappeared. And I don't know if they were testing it themselves, meaning ChatGPT or whatnot, but it's just really interesting, and it just kind of highlights the fact that this is all still very new. We're still very much in the beginning kind of phase of what kind of opportunities actually exist that we probably may have not even completely identified yet. So just kind of interesting of just kind of seeing this massive kind of shift so quickly, and seeing all these kind of opportunities.
Right. Great. So, we talked about this a little bit. In terms of the actual search volume, the market is shifting. This chart's not really representative of reality, right? I mean, Google search is still dominant in a huge way, right? So, agentic search is still a small slice of the pie, but it is growing very quickly. And at the top of that is ChatGPT, as we all know, and it definitely become the quote unquote entry point for symptom research. That patients are using it to rapidly get more information or answer their own questions that they traditionally would be, answering it, asking their practice, in all facets, in every sort of way. It's not just very specified medical issues. It's across the board. And then, of course, because Google's still the big player, there's a lot of versions of Google. There's AI overviews in the traditional search side. There's AI mode, which is kind of the ChatGPT option in Gemini, which is more of a generative. The goal of it's to search as a generative search tool. But of course, you can perform all these same functions with Gemini as well. And there's obviously a lot more integration with the Google Suite and in the mobile experience. And then you got these rising challengers like Perplexity and Claude, Grok, that are good, especially Perplexity, which is pretty great. So I think we're going to hear a lot more about some of these other players that are going to be catching up as well. But incredibly, like ChatGPT is already handling like 1 billion interactions a day. it's moving pretty quickly.
Yeah. Sorry, back on that slide a little bit,
Yeah,
just to add a little bit of
yeah,
feedback there. It's just something that we've been kind of observing is just kind of a shift in traffic, right? So where did all the traffic go?
yeah,
And one of those answers is really into the zero click world, where you're having the answer presented to you at the top of Google, right? There's there. And then also within the actual LLMs themselves, whether it be Perplexity, Claude, ChatGPT, or whatnot, we're seeing referral traffic from these tools, which is interesting. So it's by proxy though. That's the difference. Is that we're seeing traffic from these tools as a proxy for the actual searcher, so that the tool is actually searching for some of this data, and we can actually kind of see that, which is interesting. So we're seeing definitely a shift in traffic, and just the whole kind of anatomy of what was kind of traffic and just kind of promotion in general. We're just kind of seeing this big shift. One of my personal favorites is Perplexity. It's a good tool because it doesn't only just do reasoning, it does kind of like authoritative searches. So it looks for existing content that's out there on the web, and it utilizes that and presents stuff that has been kind of verified at some level, which is interesting compared to some of the other tools like ChatGPT, where it's kind of doing its own reasoning and kind of coming up with different things. Where Perplexity is actually looking at index content that's out there and kind of making an assumption based off of what it's found, which is kind of a shift. So it's a great kind of like ancillary kind of search tool, especially if you're doing any kind of research and you don't want just the answer all in one. So what's great about ChatGPT is it will give you the answer all in one swoop, and you have your answer. That's great. But sometimes you don't want just the answer, and you do want to do some research, and you do want to have more perspective. And that's where a tool like Perplexity will come into play. And then Claude, I think Claude's a good reasoning tool. If there's the great debate between Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini, they all work pretty much the same. They all have different strengths. Like I definitely think Gemini has a better feel for indexing like YouTube videos and things like that, where ChatGPT obviously doesn't own YouTube, so they don't have the ability to be able to do that exactly. And Claude is really great from a coding perspective, so it has a lot better reasoning powers. So it's just, it's kind of different LLMs for different folks, kind of a thing. But at the end of the day, you're just looking for a tool that's going to help you be more efficient.
Right. Great. So on the health search side, again, OpenAI or ChatGPT reports like 40 million turn to ChatGPT for healthcare questions daily. That number's driving ChatGPT to actually create a different version of itself, which we'll talk about. That's catered just to healthcare. That's a very new development, and it's in the traditional world of getting patient referrals and looking at online reviews, AI recommendations are kind of up there now already. So it's kind of an equal weighting, we would say. So that's happening fast, a lot faster than I think a lot of people anticipate, especially for local healthcare related search.
Yeah, well, I'm sure from a doctor's perspective, right, you're running into more situations where people are doing a search on ChatGPT or some LLM, and then actually self-diagnosing, and then getting that result, and then finding like, what should I do about that? So like, I'll also trying to like offer a prescription, which isn't the best, by the way, which we know, right? But then then they're printing that out, right, and then they're bringing it into the doctor. And if you want to be proactive about self-care, there's some value in there to have that and have that be part of your process or whatnot. But I'm sure there's a lot of people or a lot of doctors out there that are starting to see this kind of a phenomena, whereas before it was WebMD type searches and like what they found on WebMD. Look at this, they print out the WebMD page. Now they're starting to print out the actual ChatGPT page.
Yes, totally. That's great. And again, as I was talking about, it's become such a large subcategory of all searches that healthcare is starting to branch off. So ChatGPT's created its own version of itself called ChatGPT Health, and it's really just kind of the same product, but a lot more focused on just what Anthony was talking about, self-diagnosis. It seems to be pretty consumer focused, so enabling just individual people to do that. And there's pros and cons of that. We all know, like there's probably a whole separate webinar on the sort of ethics of all that, but and the sort of pain that professionals run into with people doing that kind of self-diagnosis. But there's obviously some really good things about it as well. So and ChatGPT again they're moving on that, and that's available today. Google has a similar a development platform. It's not there's not an agent, and it's not done like in a ChatGPT like format, but it's a development platform for developers to create AI-based solutions that have medical authority. And so they're claiming that a lot of it's medical authority backed. Then you have this really interesting thing, which is open evidence, which is they're touting themselves as the leading medical information platform. So this is all credible sources, the American Heart Association, American Cancer Society, JAMA, and other periodicals. All that information is being aggregated into open evidence, and it's I think that the goal of this is to be credible, a search option, and also for clinical level information as well. We haven't spent a lot of time evaluating this, but it does seem interesting. Again, the bigger point is there's a lot of inertia here happening around healthcare and agentic search. It's happening very fast. So there, but yeah, I think the key is on this page is there's a push to try to have crawling based on trusted sources versus just a general query. So that's kind of the difference. Cool. All right. And again, and maybe I'm overstating the obvious, but why people are kind of quitting the traditional search method? It's just more work, right? And it's just a lot more nuance and a lot more to sift through, and it's more time, like in Anthony's example. So, again, I think this is pretty obvious for people, but like that's really it. It's a lot faster and a lot more contextualized. You're getting a better quality response at the same time. And like today, a patient will get an answer before they even see a practice website. And of course that's what you say with just traditional search, but here, even in traditional search, we're all getting AI overview results. And again, the majority of healthcare traditional searches on Google, there is an AI overviews, and in a lot of cases now, despite all the SEO conversations we've had, and even some of the agentic search strategies that we're going to be talking about in the next few slides, even AI overviews has listings of recommended practices or practitioners in it. So there's the hierarchy of the practice is constantly changing, even in a traditional sense.
Yeah, again, I think it was kind of interesting is that we're looking at with the slide here, we're looking at one perspective right now, which is the Google perspective, and kind of having those businesses being listed there. But, that search could have easily happened in a different LLM tool. And Are you in that one? So it starts, there's now, instead of just being kind of like one channel where you need to focus, it's really changed it to be multiple channels. So that way, depending on your flavor of, agentic searching, right? Whether that be ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever, right? What is, is my practice, is my business, right, being listed? Is it on there? Is it in the top, whatever of recommendations based on the area? And I think that is really kind of the core focus of some of the AIO research that we've been doing, trying to figure out, like what is it that makes some of that stuff tick.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, I think we've talked this topic pretty good. And again, the principles of online visibility for your practice haven't changed as much, though the search world has changed. So for a practice or any business, to have presence in an agentic search result, there's considerations that a practice or a business needs to make in terms of how they're structuring the content on their website. That's going to be a key element. Just because you have a website, even if you have good reviews and a good number of reviews that are above a 4.0, it's how you structure your content on your website that's really going to make an initial impact. And there's more to that, but that's definitely a start. And the factors that we've talked about that impact AI search, and right now that we're seeing, there's many factors, but there's some that we've seen a significant percent of citations and search results cite is the actual content on your website, right? It's not something magical. So in that way, it is similar to SEO principles in the past, but there's some adjustments to the content that we're going to advocate that you make to your website to make sure that you're more present on some of these LLM search results. And that's what we refer to as structured data. So that's a key one. And the second is reviews play a very significant role, as you saw in some of those examples, right? They always have, but there's a little bit of nuance this time that's different. So it's not just about having a high score. It's about having a significant number of reviews as well. So if you've got a higher score but a small number of reviews, that's probably not as good as having a slightly lower score and a large number of reviews. And in the syndication of those reviews, having them in one place versus multiple places is really important when it comes to indexing for agentic search. I don't know, Anthony, if you got any comments there?
I was just kind of thinking, like it's interesting. I mean, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but it's interesting if you think about kind of the community score, right? And that's really what this is trying to kind of dial into. Is like, what is your community score for your practice or your business? And you're trying to figure out, what is the ideal scenario for a score? And like what you mentioned there, just to kind of elaborate on that, is that if you have a small number of reviews, a 5.0 is probably realistic because you don't have that law of averages applied to you. But if you have a large number of reviews and it's all 5.0, right, there could be some question because there's usually some good with the bad and so on. And the same can be said if it's a low score, obviously, then you're already you have some headwinds that you have to kind of overcome. So it's just kind of interesting to think about that community score and like how that applies to the overall, kind of checkbox or checklist of things that potentially could be, kind of looked at to evaluate your business and why it would be presented as a result. And that needs to be, a big focus. The other part is looking at how your frequency of reviews and then how recent your reviews are. Like, do you have if you do have a large number of reviews, was it all at once or was it consistent over time? And they're looking at the dates on that stuff. So it's just making sure that you're, staying, I guess, consistent and I think the LLMs and with medical practice is a little bit different because you can't actually ask for reviews, but just in the more of a general sense, it's looking at that, kind of consistency that you have across the board from a reviews and community score kind of perspective.
Yeah, Exactly. Okay, we're running out of time, so I'm going to run pretty fast through this, but this is an important one. So specific things that you can do on your website to be recognized by the agentic search engines. Um, Understand and answer your patient questions on your website. So adding an FAQ section that answers questions that your patients are commonly asking for. Um, Really understanding your patients and what are the most important questions to them. What are the things that the reoccurring questions specific to what you're doing. And there's some nuance into this too as well. These LLMs are looking for net new information that's unique to you. What's unique about what you do at your practice? Um, is there, what's a sort of differentiator? So having that in a subtle but concise way is important in these FAQ sections. And we do have an example slide of an FAQ. And then, it's looking for consensus. So are there, are there facts or things that you can cite about what you do in those FAQs that can help? Of course, optimizing your technical SEO, just meaning your website performance needs to be at a baseline standard. Clean site architecture, and your web pages are loading fast. Um, Other things like creating expert level content. Like showcasing your expertise in your area. Are there articles that you've participated in, or there are topics that you're an authority in that you can cite. There's some practices that have done a great job of having video FAQs about answering patient questions that are important to them, right? And then having a video response. We've seen that, and that's making an impact for them. Having content that's what we call chunkable. It's again getting away from prose and sort of long-winded paragraphs about who you are, and more about smaller digestible sections like, what's your area of expertise, in 5 words. What are your core procedures? What outcomes do you usually strive to achieve for your patients? Those sorts of things. And then, of course, like in the past, keeping the content fresh, making sure that it's relevant and updated periodically. And then, we have seen people, create some of this content and try to observe their own performance in their local search, in their local market, in their neighborhood, to see, is there presence for their practice in ChatGPT or an AI mode? So these are core things that you could do to your website today. And I'm going to skip through these because we're running out of time. But again, I think it's pretty clear. FAQs are important because it's the LLMs are looking for answers. They're not necessarily looking just for lots of information. So they're really trying to kind of cut to the chase. Give me the right answer. Give me the fact-based information about what you do, and ideally what you do that's unique, and or what you do to address questions for people in that area of practice. And then, and again, this is how to make those FAQs AI friendly is just to be short and direct, to be crisp in your language and not long-winded, but at the same time relevant, and talking more factually about what you do. Here's an example of that, which is a very general example. Dr. Jane Smith, orthopedic surgeon in Malibu, with a view. H1 meaning your title headline in that page, and your sub headline, your H2, at a glance would be bullet points about what your specialty is, your years of experience, your primary clinic or clinics locations or locations. Maybe there'd be a headline under it about your procedure name, a definition about what you do, and what the outcomes are. And then you have your FAQs under it, about things that patients are commonly asking that you think are relevant for someone that would be searching for a practice like yours. So this is the kind of structure that we're talking about when we say structured data. That's the beginning of it, and so that's really important. I know, Anthony, if you got any comments there, but.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a start. Going back to, FAQs, really
Yeah.
asking yourself, what are the questions? I know that we're short on time, but what are the questions that you're getting asked the most frequently? And those are
Yes.
the exact questions that you want to have on your website so it can be picked up by the LLM, so that way they can answer those questions for you more quickly. So instead of it being, reliant on the user or the person that would be patient to go through and go crawl through the website and try to find this. Now the LLM is crawling that for that user, right, or patient, and then presenting that to the user. So it's just kind of thinking about like, okay, what's most relevant, what matters most to that would-be patient, basically, and how can I answer those questions?
Yeah, exactly. And again, on the, I talked about the two topics, right? Or we did websites and then reviews. And again, um, reviews play a very large role in terms of indexing a practice for an agentic, being picked up for an agentic search result. Um, so some basic but important principles are increase the number of reviews whenever possible. Having more reviews is hypercritical for that. Obviously, having good reviews are important, but um, the sheer number of reviews does have a direct correlation to being featured on those search results. Again, in the example that I provided, that with a dermatologist near Los Angeles, was those practices had a significant number of reviews. Making sure your reviews are posted in more than one place, and not just on your Google My Business, which is common, or maybe Yelp, which is great. I mean, that all these are great, but an ideal world, featuring them on your website. If you have a Facebook for Business account, we've seen examples of that being picked up there. Health directories like ZocDoc or WebMD, Health Grades, other aggregators like RateMDs. So there's other places to do that. But I think the more dispersed your reviews are, the greater the chance. That's what we're seeing today. And of
Yeah.
course, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say just on the health side for, the doctors that are out there, those health directories are really important for what we plan, at least for the future, and to kind of see, kind of happening is that they are getting indexed or referenced a lot more. So it's really important just to make sure that you have a presence in those areas. And Facebook too, which are really difficult to get, by the way, but
Yeah,
Facebook reviews are really good as well.
yeah, no, for sure. Great. I think because we don't have much time for questions, I'm going to skip over the future stuff, but we'd love to talk to you more about that in a follow-up webinar. We might do that. That'd be great. This will probably be obsolete in 3 months, but, we, of course, doing a webinar, we always want to plug ourselves a little bit. So I'll keep this, under 10 seconds here, but it was the tip of the iceberg what we talked about today. We do actually have a service offering that's new that we offer to our customers to help their practices index on agentic search engines, like we talked about. So we employ the principles that we talked about on their behalf. In addition to just doing SEO optimization, we do AEO optimization. Yeah, we've had quite a few practices sign up with us, and we're helping them increase their chances of being featured on ChatGPT and AI overviews and Gemini, in their local market. So that's something we do. If there's interest, there's the QR code. Please scan it, and we definitely like to answer any questions that people have. So I'm going to move to the Q&A slide. And it has the same QR code there. So if you want to do that and fill out the information, we'll definitely follow up and love to talk to you about that in more detail. All right, so we'll do a Q&A in a very short amount of time. I don't know if people have questions. We can serve up.
Yeah, I don't see too many questions in the chat. I know that we had some. If we didn't get a lot of questions, Nick, we have a couple questions maybe that we could refer to.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
guess while we're pulling that up, the big thing is really, being at the right place at the right time. At the beginning, we had SEO, and that was, we didn't have a lot of metrics and all the insights that we have now today. AIO is very similar. We're at the infinite kind of or infant kind of stages of this, and really trying to make sure that those businesses have that digital presence and being at the right place at the right time, depending on wherever you're searching. You could be searching on Google, you could be searching on LLM. We want to make sure that the businesses that we support are present in those queries.
So yeah, a couple questions. How do AI-driven zero-click answers affect acquiring patients? And how can we measure the impact if fewer visitors reach our site?
Yeah, it's kind of has a few different answers, I guess. I think the biggest answer for that one, at least in my opinion, is really, is the phone ringing or you're booking appointments. It's not always easy to get that attribution when we're actually, when practice owners are speaking or front desk people are speaking to those new prospects or patients that are calling through. But it's just kind of watching that. One thing that we've observed is that there definitely has been a shift in traffic, right? So if there's a shift in traffic, there's a shift in clicks, and there's a shift in all the other kind of downstream metrics that kind of support traffic in general. So it's really about kind of watching that and keeping a closer eye on that. And then also the other piece that I think is really important is, querying yourself, but not clicking on it. And like, there's a whole thing on, when you look yourself up, right, and how you do that, so that way you're getting a genuine result. Where, like, for example, for Google, if you're Googling yourself but you never click on the result, then they will stop showing you the result. So it's like based on your user behavior, which is interesting. So you need to be aware of some of these things, but that is one of the things that I would recommend, is that you're really looking at that, the total number of new acquisitions that you have to the business, and kind of seeing what's shifting and what's changing. Is your traffic going down but your new acquisitions stay flat? Then you kind of know that what you're doing is still working.
Right. Great. Second question here: how do AI assistants determine which medical sources to trust and cite, and how can a small practice become a trusted source? It's a good question.
Yeah, I think let me read this. I mean, that's a really good question. I think that the whole, it goes back to the whole review component. So like, what kind of review? What's your community score, right? Do you have those reviews distributed across different networks? How much are you pushing that, I guess? And again, with practice owners and just the medical space in general, reviews are taboo, right? Because it's, like, people need to kind of do them voluntarily, right? You can't necessarily ask for them. So it makes it more challenging, but I definitely think that's where it's at. And interestingly enough, if you go look for reviews for doctors, like, they have some of the most reviews. So it's not like people aren't leaving them. It's just that the way we go about collecting that feedback is a little different. But I think the core fundamental piece to build that trust and authority is really based off of those reviews. That kind of feedback that you have out there.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's good. We have time for one more, or
sure,
we're done.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we got 50 seconds. I'll try to keep it short.
Yeah, right. How can a small practice leverage AI without huge budgets?
Oh, that's a great one. I think it starts with good SEO, right? Starts with good SEO in the first place, and then kind of utilizing best practices there. If you're doing great, SEO is not dead. SEO is like a platform to have good AIO, right? It's a stepping stone to have good AIO.
It's not like it's starting all over again, right? Yes.
Right. Yeah. We're expanding on that, and we're improving on that. So if you have the cornerstone of good SEO, then you're
You're in a good
already in a
place.
good spot to start off from an AIO perspective as well. And that's something that we do with the clients that we brought on, is that we're looking at kind of two things, kind of litmuses, which is the are you number one in the LLMs, right? That's the first question. Are you present? Do you have a presence there, right? And then the next question is after that, okay, where am I in relation to some of my competitors in my area, right? So those are kind of the two main pillars that we focus on in this kind of new world, to try to find opportunities to optimize and be more competitive in those markets.
Right. Well, great. We've gone over time, so thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. And again, let us know if you have any questions. We really appreciate you taking your valuable time to speak with us, and looking forward to speaking with you again as things evolve. We'll be reaching back out. So have a great week, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Great. Thanks, and cheers.
All right. Bye.